Hi, class. Glad you're here. How was the exam? Good, bad? For future reference, do people need a lot more time? Plenty of time? Too much time? You didn't know what to do with it? People are okay?
I think it was good for the first test.
Alright. Yay. I haven't graded them yet. I will grade them by Wednesday. Yeah. So, today, we're talking about fundamental laws of the universe, which is great. But before we get into that, we take a moment to appreciate that this past week, the Ig Nobel Prizes in Science were given out. So you've heard about the Nobel Prizes, right? Which is great and wonderful and, blah, 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 right? Fantastic. The Ig Nobel Prizes are my personal favorite. They make me so deeply happy. Have you heard about these? You need to. Okay, so some of you will appreciate them more than others, and yes. It's a series of awards that's given out every year for science that makes you laugh and then think. So, a couple years ago, the one in medicine was given out to the guy who invented the do-it-yourself colonoscopy, right? Yeah, I know, right? And like in his interview, people were like, "But why?" And he's like, "Well, some people are, colonoscopies are very invasive, so if you could just do it yourself, it'd solve so many problems." And everyone's like, "No, no, 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 nobody wants to do it themselves." Another one that was one in medicine a couple years ago was this group who investigated how effective using roller coasters to pass kidney stones, right? So kidneys can sometimes get like kidney stones stuck in them, and usually, well, it takes like surgery or some other ways to get it out. But they're like, what if you just, loop the loop a couple times? They didn't actually put people with kidney stones on them. They built a model, and they just ran it through a bunch of times. Anyways, this past week, they came out this past year's, and they're beautiful. My personal favorite, I think, is the drunk earthworms one. That was a good one. But yeah, you should. I know they're so beautiful, so beautiful. But the random pitch that ties this in, not just so. First of all, so you have options in biology. Like, you know what? I want to get earthworms drunk and see what happens. Like this is my career path. That's one option. The other option is to talk about the beauty of science, and I actually have a slightly relevant video to show you. This doesn't reference the Ig Nobel Prizes directly, though they do reference some of the projects. The levitating frogs one, he won the Ig Nobel Prize.
NordVPN.
Oh, online people, YouTube video that you see there, the why we should invest in rat massage, will get you to this video.
Hi, this is Kate from Minute Earth. For baby rats, there's nothing like a massage. No, not that kind. When licked with their mom's soft tongue, or massaged by a researcher's soft brush, their enzyme levels spike, their growth hormones rise, they thrive. To discover this heartwarming bit of information, researchers drew from a $250,000 grant from the National Institutes of Health. In other words, public tax dollars. No matter how much you like rodents, you might question whether this was a good use of public money, but it was actually a great economic investment. Fast forward a few decades. The US was spending billions each year caring for premature babies. Researchers recalled how massage had helped baby rats thrive, and they decided to try similar techniques on the baby. They grew faster, their immune systems improved, and they were discharged an average of 6 days earlier. Preterm infant massage is now common in intensive care units nationwide. An investment of less than $250,000 now saves the U.S. $5 billion in healthcare costs each year, not to mention lots of tiny lives. This outcome wasn't a given. The rat massage study, like all so-called basic research, sought to understand how the world works, with no clear applications or payoffs in mind. And while there are many good reasons to do science other than the hope of a return on investment, time and time again, basic research does end up paying off. The Human Genome Project cost the US government more than $5 billion. But thanks to its applications in all sorts of industries, it has had an estimated $1 trillion+ of economic impact. That's more than $178 for every initial dollar spent. Then there's Fermat and his little theorem, a beautiful piece of pure mathematics describing certain conditions of prime numbers. This probably very inexpensive work enabled the entire field of data encryption, now a $3 billion a year industry. But we cherry-pick these examples. Some basic research must have minimal returns on investment, or none at all, right? Well, we can't be sure, mostly because what happens between eureka and payoff can be complicated. Take the scientist who used electromagnets to levitate frogs, which seemed like a non-profitable dead end. But this kind of creative thinking eventually resulted in him developing graphene, a Nobel Prize-winning material with tons of applications, and a $42 million market in 2017. And sometimes, like in the case of Fermat's little theorem, it's a matter of time. It took 300 years to see the theorem's payoff. Intrepid economists have estimated the return on investment for basic research and calculated that overall, we get back what we invest, plus an additional 20 to 60% a year. That is a big range, because the calculations depend on which social benefits economists factor in, like the employment gained by students and researchers, or simply the advantage of knowing more stuff, and how we assign values to those benefits. Yet even the most conservative estimates suggest that overall, basic research more than pays for itself, and can even outperform more traditional investments. But the thing about basic research is that these dividends rarely go back to the lab that did the work, or whoever funded it. So private, profit-seeking firms are not likely to invest heavily in the basicest basic research. And that means, if we want to continue reaping the economic benefits of basic research, as well as all the other amazing stuff it makes possible, taxpayers will have to have a hand in the process.
Yay. Thoughts or concerns? Seriously, if you have like 15 minutes to kill, look up the Ig Nobel Prizes. They're beautiful. They're so beautiful. Yep. Okay, so yeah, here we are. We're going to talk about metabolism. So you've probably heard about metabolism before, right? Like, this person has a fast metabolism. This person has a slow metabolism. What are people saying when they say that? When they're like, oh, this person has a really fast metabolism. They don't keep on weight, right? So let's say that they're eating and they use up really quickly, right? That's usually how it's used. Okay, cool. That definition makes sense. Today we're talking about it much more broadly, okay? Remember how the first third of the class, you're done with the third of the class, by the way. Congratulations. Do it 2 more times, you'll be done. Woo, right? I know. Go you. The first third, we kind of on accident pretended that we were chemistry, right? Yeah? This third that we're in, we're kind of going to pretend that we're physics just a little bit. Okay, so the first third was like the chunks that make things up. This third, we're going to look at some of the processes. So we're going to look at metabolism, just kind of the overarching how does stuff work. We're going to look at photosynthesis. We're going to look at cellular respiration, right? Some of these just some not little tiny molecules just existing, but them doing stuff together. The last third, then we don't pretend to be any other science. We stay just biology. We're doing genetics, the last portion, okay? So metabolism here, we're going to pretend to kind of be physics. Which means today we're going to talk about energy, right? And energy is beautiful. Each cell, no matter what kind of living cell it is, it gets to act like its own little tiny chemical factory. Lots of different reactions occurring, lots of processes happening, right? It's doing stuff. And the cell's going to go around sucking energy out of things. Typically, it's going to be pulling energy out of sugar, right? So sugar is amazing. It doesn't have to be sugar, but let's say you have a sugar, you pull energy out of it, and you're going to use that blob of energy that you got to do something. That something might be something cool, like these little mushrooms that glow. I'm an adult. I'm not a biologist. But even when I see that, I'm like, I should eat it and I'll gain health or something, right? Like, it looks like something out of a video game, doesn't it? Right? It's glowing. Anyways, Um, okay, sorry. Stay focused. Or, like fireflies can give off light, right? All sorts of bioluminescent things might be light. Um, you might not be giving off light. You might be doing something like contracting a muscle, right? You're taking the energy that you pull out, the cell's taking the energy, and it's going to do something with it. Fair enough? Solid? Okay. We get kind of theoretical really fast today, alright? So stay with me. So, metabolism is the term that means just the organism as a whole, the whole series of chemical reactions that it's doing. Alright? So it's not just one reaction that's happening, it's the sum of everything it's doing. And this metabolism isn't, since it's not just one thing, it's called an emergent property, meaning it's bigger than the sum of its parts. So you have reaction A and reaction B and reaction C. All together, this gets to be metabolism. Now, metabolic pathways, like reaction pathways, often from where you start to where you end, there's a whole series of steps. We'll see enzymes later, but for now, we can just see this picture. Whereas you might start with thing A, yay, and you're trying to get thing A into thing D, right? You're trying to, eat a candy bar, get the energy out, and, I don't know, build a neuron, right? It's not as soon as your candy bar goes into you, next thing you know, you have a new brain cell, right? Like, there are some processes that happen between those 2 points, all right? So you can go from thing A to thing B to thing C to thing D. In a series of reactions, usually they're controlled by enzymes that help lead from one to the next. They don't have to be. But this would be called a metabolic pathway, where you start with something and you end with something and there's a known path to get there. Yeah? Great. If you start with something, let's say you're starting with, I don't know, are people hungry? Are all my examples always food? I should do something not food-based. It's very hard not to do food-based, especially for metabolism. Fine. I can only think of food-based examples. I'm sorry. I'll think of better examples later. Let's say you show up with, so you've got a stick of butter, right? Great. Has anybody ever been to a county fair or something where they've like sculpted something out of butter? Have you seen this? Okay. I remember I grew up in Iowa, and I remember going to the Iowa State Fair, and they had like this cow made out of butter, right? It's a thing, right? So if you get, and this is not metabolic, but stay with me for the analogy. If you have a stick of butter, right, you could use it to build something, right? Something beautiful and complex. Why? Why not, right? Okay? You could also, if you have your stick of butter, what's the slightly more normal thing to do with it? Eat it, right? You can go from how complicated and organized it is, so you can break it down and use it, right? Metabolic pathways, there are the two types. There's either the type where you take something and you use smaller parts and you put energy in and you make something complicated and beautiful, not beautiful, but something more complicated. Small parts putting together make something big. Or you can have something big, break it apart into small bits, right? Those are the two options. Catabolic processes are where you have something complicated and you break it down into smaller bits. Alright? Fair enough? If you want to remember this forever, you can think cannibalism. I'm not pro-cannibalism, but just if you want to think about the breaking it down in smaller parts, that's an easy way to do it, okay? You'll remember it forever now. You're welcome. Yeah. So, catabolic pathways, okay? Something, it's going to release energy when you do this, right? So, as you're gnawing on your stick of butter, or whatever it is you're doing with your butter, I've seen people do this. I once had a roommate who drank, you know, like Hershey's chocolate sauce that you pour on chocolate? She drank it straight out of the jar. I was like, oh, that can't be a good sign. I know, right? She's like, it's amazing. Anyways, so okay. could try it if you want. I've never tried it. I'm
No.
sure it's good though, but.
It's too sweet. I remember as a kid after dinner, my grandpa would do like ice cream and put it on top,
Uh-huh.
and when my mom was looking, he'd squirt a little bit.
Aw, that's nice. Like, it's all good. Like, say what?
I used to eat butter.
You see, but my brothers did too. My mom was like, we'll feed you as much as you want. You want children to like stop eating the butter. It kind of made her concerned. Anyways, okay, but as you do that, as you're eating butter or drinking chocolate sauce, whatever it is you're doing, you're breaking down those molecules to get stuff out, right? Or you can be using small components to build something up. So catabolism is breaking it down. Anabolic pathways, anabolism, is going to be using little simple molecules to build something more complex, right? So now you're, say, using individual nucleic acids to build a long molecule of DNA. Super complicated. You start with something really small, unorganized. You built something very complicated. All right? Yeah. Concerns about that? Briefly. If you came in and you saw that, I don't know, okay, non-food analogy here. If you have like a porcelain unicorn, it's beautiful, it's like yay big, it's sparkly, it's got wings, it's just gorgeous, okay? Unicorns have wings. Do they have wings? I think you have something else. Anyways, whatever this thing is, it's beautiful, right? This little porcelain thing you have. I think you have Pegasus. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you. I was like, that can't be right. The unicorn's the horn.
Nope.
Thank you. Random biology fact. Marco Polo, the famous explorer, he found unicorns when he went to Africa, and he wrote, basically, it's beautiful. He's really disappointed. He's like, so the stories talk about unicorns being like beautiful and graceful. They're big, they're fat, they're gray, and they're slow. He totally was describing rhinoceroses, and he was really disappointed. He's like, not what I was expecting. Anyways, say what? I mean, they're awesome, but they weren't what he had in mind. Anyways, okay, you and your unicorn porcelain statue, right? If you come back and it's on the floor in little chunks, it's very sad. Presumably, nobody had to spend a bunch of energy to break it into tons of little spots, right? Like it got bumped, it fell, it shattered, right? Okay. To put it back together and to glue every single piece back together, is it going to cost you energy? Like a lot, right? Catabolic pathways, where you break stuff down, doesn't cost energy. Usually it should give off energy, right? As you shove this unicorn off, right? It doesn't cost a lot to do that. To build stuff back up, to make something complicated from simple parts, that takes energy to put that together. Everyone's with me intuitively? Okay. Whew. Deep breath. Okay, we're super theoretical today, which is fine. Also, how is it having the black type on white? It's been white on black thus far. Do people care? Any difference? No difference? Okay. Next I'm going to do that like light blue with yellow text. You've seen people do that. And you're like, oh, please stop. Okay. I think people have the option of dark and light or light and dark, but nothing else. Yeah. Okay. So, moving on to energy. Right, so we've got metabolism is going to worry about energy. So, energy is this, at most basic, the ability to cause change. All right, that's a very vague definition. Right now, something can change. And if it can do something useful, we can call it work. Okay, energy could get work done. All right, and that work might be something like making something warmer, making something move, making something change the location of something. It can exist in lots of different forms, but you can do stuff with it. So, just because I'm interested in what people are feeling about energy and how they're doing with it, help me out here. What kind of energy could like a bowling ball have? The kind that hurts. You're like, oh, okay. So like it's moving, right? So somebody's thrown it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's kinetic energy. So as this bowling ball is moving, it's called kinetic energy. Energy associated with motion, right? Great. And this would hurt, right? If you've ever gotten hit in the shins with a bowling ball, I hope you haven't, but you have. Okay, some people here have been hit in the shins with bowling balls. What happened?
I was at the YMCA and
Uh-huh.
we take us bowling,
Uh-huh.
and there was this crackhead kid,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I see where you're going.
and he was trying to do a spin
Uh-huh.
and go,
Uh
and I was on the
uh
way next to him, and that spin took me to the ground.
ouch. I'm glad you're still with us.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Whew. Unlike people had dramatic bowling ball accidents with their neighboring lane buddies not understanding how to do this. Okay. Yeah. Whew. That's an impressive injury though, because most of the time when I get injured in like I should have been paying attention. But like random people next to me taking me out with bowling balls, that's impressive.
I have lots of fun injuries. I've been crushed by milk.
We're gonna have to talk about that later. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay. Cool. The back of the class is like, well, I didn't know what you guys are doing up there. Okay. Everyone's with us that bowling balls can hurt if they're moving fast? Great. We're gonna stay on bowling balls here. Let's say a bowling ball's not moving. Why is it a bad idea, or is it a bad idea, to put this bowling ball that's not moving, to put on the very top shelf? You've got a bookcase, you put on the very, very top shelf.
There's a bunch of potential.
Because there's a bunch of potential energy, okay? Can we all just like, on the cringe level, understand it's a bad idea to keep bowling balls on the top shelf? Right? Even if they're not doing anything, they could. Right? Because of the location that it's at. Fair enough? Okay. This gets into the types of energy we have. So kinetic energy is probably the most straightforward. That's the kind that the bowling has if it's actually being thrown by some nut job next to you, right? Right? It's moving, it's got kinetic energy. Whee, right? Heat or thermal energy is a type of kinetic energy, but instead of worrying about the whole bowling ball itself moving, this is where the random movement of the atoms or molecules inside, they're moving. So the bowling ball is hot. Okay? There's energy associated with that. Fair enough? Potential energy is the kind where energy exists because of the location or structure of the thing, so the bowling ball on the shelf, or like if you have a spring and you crush it down, right? Nothing's moving, but there's energy stored in that coil with how it's squashed, right? Because like if you have a spring, you crunch it down and you like say put a piece of tape around it. As soon as you cut that tape, it's bouncing, right? Right? Or if you've got like a rubber band and you're stretching it and you stop, there's not kinetic energy there. It's potential energy because as soon as you let go, boom, right? Based on the structure. Everyone's there? Chemical energy is probably the least intuitive. It's the potential energy that can be available from chemical reactions. So you can imagine you can imagine that spring crushed down, right? You can imagine if you say had two very electronegative components, right? Both of them have like a negative charge on them, and if you cram them down next to each other in a molecule and like tie them together somehow, right? It's kind of like squishing a spring down. So as soon as you break that connection that's holding them together, boom, right? Does that idea make some level of sense? Okay? So chemical energy is the kind of energy that, say, when you're eating that chocolate bar, that's energy you're getting out, or that you're going to try to use, right? Because presumably if you're eating a chocolate bar, the chocolate bar isn't moving fast, right? You're not getting kinetic energy from it, right? Okay? Hopefully it doesn't have to be super hot. You don't need to get thermal energy from it. And you're not really getting potential energy from it, right? You're pulling it out from this chemical energy point of view. Fair enough? Yeah? Now you can switch these energy forms amongst themselves, right? So is there a way people could think of you could change, say, kinetic energy to potential energy? Yeah. So kinetic energy is going to do something. Let's say your bowling ball is falling down on top of a catapult, right? And you spring something up high. So you went from the kinetic energy of falling to now you put something up high, right? You can do the reverse. You could have something fall. You could go from potential energy to kinetic energy, right? You can mix them around. You can go from something like chemical energy to heat. You're super cold. You eat a whole box of cookies. You feel nice and warm and toasty, right? You can get this done. Fair enough? All right. Whew. We're not finishing on the slides today. That's okay. We didn't finish up in the 9 o'clock session. I just thought I'd talk way faster. Okay. We've got loads of time. So, we're going to talk for the rest of today about thermodynamics, which is cool. You know about thermodynamics.
I don't know all this stuff.
Oh, well, good. Why are you here? It's great. Like, glad you're here, but
Well, I have to, because,
it doesn't transfer.
no, I took AP Bio,
Oh, you're like old news.
so, like, you had to, like, take a test
Mhm.
instead of just getting the college credit,
Mhm.
and it was senior year,
Mm.
so I'm so glad I didn't, because everything
Ah.
was online, and it was so much harder, and I'm like,
Gotcha.
not worth the money.
Okay. Glad you're here. A lot of people probably haven't heard of this, though. Is that true? Okay, I'm getting nods. Okay, so we're going to talk about thermodynamics. Dynamics has to do with change, right? And thermo has to do with heat. Basically, this is going to talk about how energy is changing, okay? Everyone's there? There are some things theoretically that don't, like, care about their environment. So you can imagine a thermos, right? Whatever's happening inside the thermos doesn't really care if there's zombies outside, if it's hot, if it's cold. It's kind of just doing its own thing, right? That's called a closed system. Its reactions just occur internally. Um, in like everything else, it's called an open system, and that's when energy and matter can move around between whatever thing we're talking about and anything else, right? So, if it's really hot outside, you're going to get warmer, even though the heat isn't coming from you, right? Um, if it's cold outside, you're giving off heat to the environment, right? Even though the environment's not you. Fair enough, right? Um, all organisms are called open systems, which just means they can move energy and matter between themselves and outside. Everyone's with me there? Great. Okay, now we have 2 laws to learn. It's called the first 2 laws of thermodynamics. It's going to be great. The first law of thermodynamics, I don't have good pictures for these. If people have good suggestions for pictures, let me know, because I don't have good suggestions for pictures. The first law of thermodynamics is for the whole universe, the whole thing, which is a lot to, like, feel super brilliant, that the amount of energy that exists is the amount of energy that exists, period. Okay? Just, it exists. Boom. And that means you can move energy around, but you can't create new energy. Okay? And you can't break the energy you have. You can shove it between things, but you don't get to just, like, poof, make more, or have it disappear. Okay? So this is called the conservation of energy. It's sometimes often stated as you can't win, meaning you can't get more energy out than you put into something. Are we feeling some sort of intuitive grasp of this? Like, yeah, okay, right? I could go from potential energy to kinetic energy, right? But as my bowling ball hits the ground and, say, bounces slightly, it's not going to bounce up higher than it came down, right? Like if you throw a bouncing ball, yeah, you put extra energy into it. But if you just drop something, you're not expecting it to bounce higher than you dropped it from. Fair enough? The second, so that's the first law of thermodynamics. Energy can't be created, can't be destroyed, but can be changed. The second law of thermodynamics is the kind of rough one, and this is why you can't build a perpetual motion machine. People are forever trying to build perpetual motion machines. Physics is working hard against you for this one, okay? Because back up here, you can't get more energy out than you put in. The second law of thermodynamics says, you know what? You can't even break even. Every time you switch energy form from one form to the other, you lose some usable energy. Okay, you don't destroy it, but you lose a little bit of it. So, not this summer because that's no fair because it's been a weird summer for people. But in the past, has anybody gone to a country that has a different form of currency? Yeah, okay. So you show up with your $100 and you're like, great, I want to change this into pounds or euros or yen or whatever, right? Beautiful. So you have $100. When you change the $100, do you get $100 exactly worth of whatever? No. Why does some of it go? The people who change take it, don't they? Right? It costs a little bit to do this. Yeah.
Well, no, but like for me, I have like a sister bank.
Oh yeah, okay. If your bank's beautiful, that's great.
But it's but just like the currency itself, like if you put in $100 in euros, it's technically only like you only get like
Because of the
95.
Because of the exchange rate, right? So okay. So there are a couple things around. Yeah. So working an analogy here. So let's say this is not the exchange rate at all. Okay. So we're just gonna assume it. We're actually gonna go to that special island country that you built. Okay. Island country you built. That's great. A currency unit there. One currency unit is worth $2 US. Okay. Cool. Not a problem. So if you have $10 US, you could go get 5 your special island's country currency dollars, units, okay? Fair enough? That's it. You've not lost any money changing back and forth that way, right? The first law of thermodynamics, if it was with money, would say that, okay, you show up with your 10, if you go to change it, you can change it for the same amount, you can change it to 5 because that's what it's worth, but they're not going to change it for 100, all right? They're not going to give you more than you came in with. Fair enough, right? The second law of thermodynamics is saying, okay, yeah, theoretically you can keep the same value, you can change it between forms, keep the same value, but when you change money, like just in the world, whoever changes the money usually charges you a percentage of it. It's very frustrating. They charge you a percent to change it into pounds or euros or whatever, and they charge you a percentage to change back, right? They're like service fee or whatever they call it, right? You're like, huh, okay. Second law of thermodynamics says basically the universe charges a service fee, okay? The energy doesn't disappear. The money doesn't disappear, right? The bank got it. But if you change energy from one form to the other, you lose a little bit of usable energy. So you're changing energy from the potential energy associated with electricity, okay, into kinetic energy. You're moving air from a fan, all right? You can't go 100% the energy that was in the electricity to 100% air movement. Your fan gets warm. Like if you feel the back, if you feel the motor, it gets warm. You weren't trying to have it get warm, right? You want it all to just go from electricity to movement, but you accidentally lose some of the energy through heat. Everyone's with me there? Second law of thermodynamics is saying every time you switch between forms, it costs you a little bit. The universe still has the same amount of energy, but the amount that you have that you can hold and do something with, you lost some there. Fair enough? Okay, but now I have a concern. Well, we'll see this picture and then I'll have a concern. A cell is going to happily, or not unhappily, it's going to change organized forms of energy into heat. So it's going to break something down, it's going to do stuff with it, it's going to lose some heat. See my little buddy here? He's pushing a rock off a mountain. Yeah, okay. Does it cost him work to do this? Yeah, right? Okay. It's not just, the rock going up mountain is not just spontaneous. Fair enough? Okay. If he lets go, what's happening? He's gonna get crushed. It's very sad. Okay, let's say he leaps out of the way. Boom. Okay, he leaps out of the way. Great. What's happening to the rock? It's going down. Everyone's with me there? Does anybody have say what?
I said if it crushed him, it still roll all the way down.
Yeah, either way. I know, but I just don't like the mental image of him getting mooshed because he's trying so hard. But yeah, whether or not he gets mooshed, the rock going downhill is spontaneous. Okay? Meaning, the term spontaneous for biology, as far as we care, means it can occur without you adding energy into it. If he stands aside, there's no energy. You don't have to add energy to this. You don't have to push the rock downhill. It's going to go from its high energy. It's got a lot of potential energy. It's going to go from high energy to low potential energy, right? Spontaneously. You don't have to do anything to make that happen. All right? The energy is not going to be destroyed, right? So as it rolls down the hill, it's going to lose some heat as friction because it's going to roll over the rocks and trees and who knows what, right? It might change the potential energy of some other things. It might move some rocks, right? It's going to lose its heat. But it's going to go from its usable form up here, high energy, down at the bottom of the hill, it'll be low energy. It's not going to be, can't really get a lot of energy out of it there. It's going to be, okay? That's a spontaneous process. Non-spontaneous processes, you have to put energy in. So getting this rock up to the top of the hill, you have to put energy in. You can do it, but it's not spontaneous. All right? If it's spontaneous, it needs to happen without energy input. It's going to increase the disorder of the universe, which is a really rough way of saying it's going to increase the entropy of the universe. Are people okay with this concept so far? You've got your puzzle, it's in a box, you put it in, well, let's do checkers. You have checkers in a box, right? You've got all the little red pieces lined up on one side, you have all the black pieces lined up on the other side, right? Just as this checker box is interacting with the world, right? The pieces are going to get all jumbled up. Fair enough. Spontaneous goes from ordered to less ordered, right? What you do not expect to have happen is all the pieces are jumbled up, and you shake the box, and you open it up, and they've organized by color. Right? No, you don't expect that, right? Thermodynamics is working against you. You're not going to see that happen, okay? To get them organized, you're going to have to put energy in to sort them out. Yeah? Okay. So, spontaneous gives off energy, goes from high energy to low. You don't have to put energy into it. Non-spontaneous, you have to put energy into it, and you're moving it up. Right? Spontaneous does not mean fast. It can be fast. It can be really, really fast. Boof. But it doesn't have to be fast. So, like, a mountain getting worn down by erosion, that can be spontaneous. It's not, like, instant, but you don't have to, like, do anything to have this happen. Everyone's with me there? Spontaneous is just showing, for biology, is just showing which way the energy is going. Okay? Yes. Entropy is this disorder, this non-complexity biologically. So, as you eat an apple, the organization of an apple is phenomenal. It's very, very complex, right? The organization of feces is less complex, right? So going from when the energy comes into you, when the apple comes into you, you're going to lose energy by the time it leaves you, right? It's going to get less complicated. Yeah? Okay. Whew. Okay. Have I lost anybody yet? What? No, I don't want to happen. Okay, so we're okay that if something's spontaneous, it's going to increase entropy. It's going to increase disorder. Yeah? Great. Similarly, like you know this intuitively. I'm convinced you know this intuitively. Like if you have an egg and you crack into a bowl, right? And you stir it, you're going to go from the organized structure to kind of disorganized, all kind of homogeneous goo, right? Please tell me you don't expect this. If you have an egg that's already mixed up, you do not expect you to be able to stir, 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 and put it back together, right? Okay, you don't expect that. Even though, okay, good, you shouldn't. But like, the movements to do it, like, you're putting this, you, if somebody was to play eggs being scrambled backwards, you'd know it's being played backwards, right? Because it goes from super unorganized, without the input of much energy, going to really organized, you know it was backwards, right? One last example, then I'll move on. If you're on the top of a high dive, have you ever been to the top of a high dive? Those things are really high. It's great, but you get to the top, you're like, oh, I regret all of my life choices. Okay, up there you're at potential energy, right? And then you jump off, whee, now you're in kinetic energy, right? You hit the water, hopefully pointy, not flat, because that's a problem. But you've done this too, I bet, yeah. Whew. You dive in. That energy now you transfer it to the water, right? So the water's going to move. It's going to heat up slightly because of the friction, right? The water heats up slightly, and you're going to move the water, right? Okay. There's now more heat in the water than you had before. You put energy into the water. Great. But you went from something that was very, very organized, spontaneous process, to less organized, right? You don't expect the heat of the pool to gather itself together and hurl you back onto the top of the high dive, right? No? Okay. If that happens, whew, okay. There's the same amount of energy in the pool. The energy's there, but it's not a spontaneous process because it's backwards, right? Okay, you people are like solid with understanding fundamental physics concepts. No, it's called the error of time. It's a big thing. It's really a big thing. Okay. But, okay. Got a concern here. Everyone's solid on the pool shouldn't hurl me back up to the top, and everyone's solid on it takes energy to put things together, blah, blah, blah. And that the entropy of the universe is increasing, right? That it's really easy to bust stuff up, it's hard to put it together. But, like, I happen to be way more complicated than, like, a bag of random chemicals. Like, it's, kind of organized there internally. Like, I've got, like, muscles and neurons and things, right? So, how is that possible if every time if spontaneous processes get less organized, how can you make something really, really complex and organized? Like, hedgehogs are really complex and organized. How do we do that? Question. Is making a hedgehog a spontaneous process? No, right? It's not just going to spontaneously occur without the input of energy, okay? You need energy to come in. So, really good news for all of you, it's probably not news to you, but good news for you, energy is flowing into the system, okay? You're not, hedgehogs or you or other things aren't just a thermos that just has to interact by itself. Energy keeps pouring into the system. And because energy keeps pouring into the system, you can use the energy to drive non-spontaneous processes. Alright? Fair enough? Making a hedgehog is not spontaneous, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be because you can keep sucking energy from someplace. For us, with the one exception of bacterium that live next to thermal vents in the ocean, the rest of the organisms you care about, or that exist, are going to suck their energy from light, right? So, this might be upsetting. I'm sorry if I'm creepy. I don't mean to be creepy, but I sometimes am creepy. If a squirrel is dead, sorry, it's hard sometimes to think of these things. If a squirrel is dead, it'll still have chemical reactions happen in it, right? But they'll be spontaneous. The circle of life is going to decompose, okay? Everyone's with me here? But if a squirrel's alive and doing things, it's going to be having non-spontaneous reactions happen too. It's going to be making complicated things, right? Where does the squirrel get the energy? Nuts, okay, sure. It's going to be eating something, right? It gets energy from nuts and it can use some of that energy to keep building itself up more complicated, right? Where did the nut get the energy from? photosynthesis, right? It sucked the energy from light, okay? Tons and tons and tons of energy is pouring into the system via light, right? So that's going to be captured by, say, photosynthetic organisms, right? And then the squirrel will eat that, and then the coyote will eat the squirrel. It's the circle of life. I should, like, burst into Lion King, right? Everyone's good? Okay, I won't burst into it, but I will play it next week.
Wait, the movie or?
Not the whole thing, just the song. The song, yeah. Sorry, you don't want me to sing the thing. I promise you don't. Okay. We're good on that concept? Yeah? So cells can create ordered structures from less ordered material. Non-spontaneous processes, they're going to take energy. That's okay. They can do that. Cells can also do the other thing. They can take some sort of ordered form and break it down to less organized form. They can totally do that. You can chew things up, not a problem. And this energy flow through the system is going to be entering via light, right? And it's going to be leaving via heat. So far, so good? I absolutely recognize we've gone over, like, fundamental laws of the universe, laws of thermodynamics, but are we okay with where we've been today? So, life takes energy, yeah? Metabolism's the overall what chemical reactions are happening. You can either break things down or build things up. Energy can exist in multiple forms. You get to you can switch those forms amongst each other, but you can't just, like, completely destroy it. When you switch those forms, you lose some of the ability to do stuff. All right, and some things that break down are going to be spontaneous. Things that build up are going to be non-spontaneous, and when things are spontaneous, they're going to increase the entropy of the universe. All right? Questions? Super briefly in the last, like, 1 minute. Can I just have you do this? Just because I thought we'd get farther, and we can ask other questions. This is just an old question. Yay, thanks, class.
Honestly, yeah.
If someone isn't reading yours, we'll practice.
I never read yours. Never read yours? I read Casey's back.
There we go. Okay, am I missing anybody?
Here.
You're here? Kenzie's here? Did I miss anybody else? Anybody else? Sweet. All right, see you on Wednesday. We're going to be throwing paper at each other. It'll be great.
Can I sit out?
Yeah, you don't have to have paper thrown at you. That's fine.
No, it's just last time I threw paper, I ended up breaking a finger.
Will you throw like trees? Wait, I've never seen this done before. Wait. Sorry, let me stop the recording. Hi, recording people.